Good morning. This is Talking Devils. Wayne Barton here, joined by Manchester United legend Paul Parker to talk over eventful time at United. As always, if you're watching live on YouTube, if you can like, subscribe, get your comments in. If you're watching the replay, say hello. We reply on the replays. If you're watching on social media, you get your comments in, and we'll try and get to as many as we can. If you are listening back on the audio podcast, subscribe on the platform you listen on. If you leave a positive review on the platform you're listening on as well. We are planning to be joined by Dave at some point, but the torrential rain has made its way over to Ireland and he's suffering with that at the moment, stuck in traffic. So hopefully he'll join at some point. Paul, how are you? How was your weekend?
My weekend was watching Fulham v Man City, and yesterday I didn't. To be perfectly honest, I didn't see the game. I was in no great rush. Something that I'd done organise. Well, I didn't organise it. I was asked to do an event, manage a team in Man v
Yep.
Fat. Me and Terry Butcher were the managers of separate teams, and that was at Millwall Football Club yesterday afternoon. So I did miss the game. I presumed I wasn't going to miss much, and I presumed that nothing was going to be, nothing was really going to change from what I saw from the previous game. And I think I'm not far off, really. The only thing that surprised me, really, was the scoreline, really.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, because it's been a while and we didn't do a podcast last week. So tell me a little bit about what your thoughts were on what we saw against Palace. Because it's like people, and we've done it many times on this podcast where we've talked about, is this the worst since Fergie? And it was a real low point, that one. To be honest with you, I thought, I'm not one who's called for any managers to be sacked, but I thought it was difficult that he was going to survive that one. So I was actually survived, but surprised that he kept the job for the weekend. I guess they're just going to see it through to the end of the season. But what did you make of what we saw against Palace?
Well, just on the bit about Palace, and again, it was one of those moments where I wish I could have said no, so I wasn't commentating on the game. But it was just, I found it just embarrassing, really embarrassing. But you have to give a lot to Palace, the way everything about Palace have shifted since their new manager's come in. He's virtually stopped them being a backward-thinking team and made them into a forward-thinking team. And when you've got the two players they've got in Eze, but more Elise, who I've been a fan of from his Reading days, to when he's come to Palace, and Roy has put him out wide, and he's been a revelation out wide. But when I saw him at Reading, he always played in the middle, and most games he was always the best player on the pitch, and he plays in the middle. And I knew it was going to be a problem. The moment he played in the middle with Eze, those two would just play off of each other. But then when I looked at the team that the manager put out, I would have looked at more again, even yesterday, Wan-Bissaka in the middle, because you've got a natural defender. Again, seems like in certain ways, and it's not the manager, but Casemiro has been hung out to dry in the position he's been put in. You put him in a Real Madrid at centre half, he would look like maybe one of the best centre halves ever, because of the way the football is, the way the team organises itself. But you're constantly asking him to take people running on, and he can't do it. But I looked at the forward line. I look at Highland, who I've got a lot of time for. It's been a horrific first season at the biggest club in the world for him. Doesn't get enough help. No one's really using him. And in the end now, what he's got to that stage now is that every time someone makes contact with him, he throws himself to the floor. I mean, he did it against Crystal Palace. He had an opportunity to go, throws himself on the floor. What is he? 15 stone? 12. I'm going to say, about 13, 14 stone, I'm going to say. Solid, typical centre forward kind of body shape, stature. And he falls to the floor easy. He's up against his competitor in Anderson. Didn't want the physicality with him. And I thought to myself, you're built for that. It's absolutely perfect. But you made it easy for Anderson. Anderson loves the fight. And he just kept falling down. And So what happens is that he's got into the system. He's fallen into the system at Old Trafford where it ain't going right. Let's look for things to gain rather than just make it. Let's have a challenge. Just get in there and really put my foot in. Let's go and have a go. And he's just fallen by the wayside, got bad habits from what he arrived with, and it needs a complete change. I've been saying it, but it doesn't need me to say it. You need the bigger boys, the ones who sit on the TV on Sky now, who come out and say it, because then everyone wants to talk about it because they're scared to mention it. When someone who ain't working there comes in that level, comes and says, but it's blatantly obvious it needs a total rebuild. Don't talk about getting rid of 2 or 3 and bringing in 3 or 4, because they'll be caught up in it as well. We've seen it already with players. People are having a go at the players to have a go at Ten Hag. Everyone now is looking at the players who have come in to dig him out that way. Those players, it's human nature, have been caught up in it, which is mostly that it's so infected. It's gone beyond really getting any help. Now what's going on mostly in that dressing room of the players. Wayne Rooney alluded to something, didn't allude to it. He said it, and I've been saying it for months and months. Again, he doesn't get it. A lot of the players are pulling one. It's as simple as that. They're picking and choosing their games. And you've heard me say that many times, Wayne. I've been in a dressing room before. I've been in a relegation battle, be it that I was only, 19, 20 years of age. I've been there. I felt it. You don't want to go out there sometimes in certain games when you believe you're going to get beat. You don't want to be if it's really bad, be known or mentioned as one of those players who was out there. And there's players who are doing it. And everybody knows the players who are pulling one. You see that by their non-appearance and when they come back. Let's look at the final. Let's see what happens there. And Wayne hit the nail on the head. The Euros. A lot of them are just thinking about that and thinking about the national glory, that everyone will suddenly forget about club. But you can't. You just can't do it. It's like all of a sudden having a row with your missus and you have a big bust up, and all of a sudden you go out, you get everyone around you who likes you, and you're going out and you're the king, you're walking around, and all of a sudden, but whatever happens, you have to come home and face it. And these players don't understand it. They have to face what they've gone and done over this duration of time. At 6 weeks Euros, 5 weeks, 6 weeks Euros is not going to hide any player from what's gone on this season and the previous season.
Yeah, I agree with that. Danny says in the comments, Wayne was spot on yesterday regarding injuries. Rooney, not me. Vicky says good morning to both of us. Good morning, Vicky. Hope you're well. Johnny says morning, gents. Hope you're both well and sufficiently dry. Well, see, shiny bald heads. Yeah, all round. No rain on us, no glisten. Dan asks a question. By the way, I've got to give a shout out to Dan. It was my birthday over the weekend, and he helped get this amazing present. I posted about it on socials. What a guy. Thanks, Dan. Good to see you before the game. Before I talk about Arsenal, then, so I'm going to talk about the game. I know you weren't there, you didn't watch it, Paul, but give us my own thoughts on it. But before we do that, Dan's asked this question: do you think United would be better off out of Europe rather than possibly playing Conference League next season? So, am I right in thinking that a couple of seasons ago Arsenal were out of Europe altogether, and they sort of like built a season where they developed unity from it? I mean, it's not. I can't say. Is it ever a good thing for United to not be in European football, considering the reputation of the club? But from the purpose of moving forward as a club, it's a good argument.
It is a good argument, but I think Manchester United's Europe. I think Europe needs Manchester United in the tournament. Everyone will say, "Oh, the Conference League is nothing. It's this, it's that." I'm sure people tried to say that before United went and won the Cup Winners' Cup in '91. They tried to. People then might have been maybe football because it wasn't social media. The Cup Winners' Cup was a big thing for Manchester United then. That's when really Sir Alex got some footings in, and everything else has been history since what he achieved from then. So the club might just need to go and play in that tournament. UEFA need Manchester United in that tournament to give that club a little bit. Jose Mourinho won that tournament. He won that with Roma. He was jumping up and down with it. So that gives you an opinion. Roma, one of the biggest sides in Italy, went and won that, and they celebrated like they won the big one. So if they qualify for it, respect it. Tottenham, Wolves, Aston Villa have been in that tournament, and there's enough other teams have been in that tournament, haven't won it. West Ham have won it. So they're making it out then to be a small competition, easy competition because West Ham won it. But then you've got to look, Aston Villa, who everyone's been raving about this season, couldn't beat the Greek side. The Greek side, Olympiacos, were better than them. Were better than Aston Villa. So don't knock it. If Manchester United get into it, have to respect it. I do not want to see people popping up and all, tin pot cup and everything. It still matters to the club to be in there. It keeps you there, keeps you around. Saying that though, Manchester United are always around because everyone wants to talk about it. So when you mentioned there about Arsenal had a season out and they've done this and done that, Wayne, you know exactly Manchester United can't do that. They can't be out because everyone will mention they're not in Europe. Everyone then would expect them to win every single game to do this because they're not in Europe, because they've got no games on a Thursday. They've got this. They've done it with Spurs. Everyone said it was Spurs, and all of a sudden Spurs are getting a lot of grief because they're only going to play a 42 game. So is it 40 game season, 41 game season, no Europe, gone out of competition early. You can't win at the moment. You can't win if you're Spurs. If you're Spurs, you 100% can't win if you're Manchester United. So for me, keep the engine running, play games of football. Keep it going. You want as many games. Because the moment people say, oh, you need a rest, you don't need all these midweek games. The moment you have a rest, then all of a sudden human nature steps in that certain players can't play like they need to keep going. All of a sudden people have a go at you. So the best way about playing football, to go about it, is to play as many games as possible. It's a load of rubbish, this resting, too many games within a certain amount of day. We've just allowed two managers to come from different countries and dictate what's happening in our English league.
Yeah. Danny says if we do end up in the conference, we just need to play the kids. Embarrassing to even be in that competition. A club of our size.
I don't agree with that. I totally don't agree. Don't agree that play kids. That's disrespecting it. You don't do it. It's not easy. You go in there to be half decent. Teams with like everything, trying to build this and decent named teams in there. As you go on, play kids. We can't play kids because our main team aren't good enough. Our kids aren't good enough to even maybe go into European competition because they haven't learnt a little bit, enough of it about Premier League football, about being in and around that.
My wonder is, I feel like when you wonder how, because the simple matter of fact is that the scale of transition that's necessary in order to challenge means that a manager needs to be backed, whether it's Ten Hag or whoever they bring in, if it's not Ten Hag. And that manager needs to be backed to oversee a transition. And it's Ratcliffe and co now have got that. They've taken the responsibility of saying we're the ones who are going to finance that transition. We're the ones who are handling that. So they're going to have to understand that it's a wholesale transition of like most of these players coming in and out. So the longer that is left, the longer the process takes, obviously, because you've got to sort of get players in and out of the door. And obviously, there's the new financial rules that unless we do a Chelsea and get everyone on 59-year deals, until you get around the FFP things, then it's hard to sort of see how United can spend the money in a short period of time. So there's going to have to be patience there, whoever the manager is. And really, the buck is going to have to stop with Ratcliffe and Ineos because they're the ones handling the football operations at the moment. But I tend to agree. What the point is what happens in the meantime to generate that jolt of change from whoever's left, and maybe they should be in that competition. Like considering that they're supposed to be Manchester United in the European Cup, maybe the relative shame of being in the Conference League and the embarrassment of it would be enough to sort of jolt these players up. Yeah, you never know. Nothing else seems to have done. Losing 5-0 in games, losing 4-0 to Palace, throwing away a 3-0 lead against Coventry. There's no shame too great for some of them teams. I'll talk about Arsenal a little bit. Now, I'll try and tie this into your experiences of watching Fulham at the weekend and tie it into the championship race. To be honest, it's the closest we're going to talk about a title race for a while on this podcast. Not really, unfortunately. So you said about the improvement that was necessary, and I guess that we did see it really because we only had scored to one. I was expecting 4 or 5 again. I didn't want to see that against Arsenal, and you have that thing before kickoff, like everyone's saying, "Oh, I prefer Arsenal to win because it keeps the pressure on City." And nobody wants City to win the league, but I don't want Arsenal to win the league. Like I don't want to make a choice, and I hate like being in that position as a United fan, feeling like you've got to make that choice. And Dave has joined us here. We're just talking about the Arsenal game, and Paul's, well, you'll understand context about a tough one, Dave. I hope you well. So yeah, we needed to see some kind of reaction, and we did see a reaction of sorts. We were nowhere near as porous. It was a really sad indictment of what would become because there was no real threat. We didn't lay a glove on them. It was a bit of an early flow, but you knew conceding a goal was inevitable, and it was about how we were going to handle that. We didn't really. There was a late second half performance, which was really strict. I think it was galvanised by the atmosphere, the fans getting that level of defiance that they normally do towards what they feel is the inevitable end of a managerial, where they start chanting about the history of the club in a different kind of way. And they were chanting the George Best chant for 20 minutes. And I think Arsenal got a little bit unnerved with it because they were, why are they celebrating this? Why are they getting behind the team when nothing's going on? But then the players, Garnacho in particular, started to liven up. That said, we still didn't create anything. Garnacho had a couple of off chances, crosses snatched across goal, but everyone, we were missing Bruno badly. Ahmad was bright in the first half, but laboured in the second. Anthony came on and offered little, and I'll talk about Anthony's reactions in a moment. But before I come to Paul and talk about the overall state of the Premier League with regards to Arsenal, Dave, you obviously watched him. What did you make of our performance?
I mean, we've seen worse performances this season, but I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. I think Arsenal didn't get out of second gear. They scored the goal and they sat back and they didn't want to create many chances, and I think that's a little bit damning on Manchester United and how far we've come or how far we've fallen. That teams can just decide that we'll just come, we'll get a goal. These are not going to be much of a threat, and we'll just knock the ball about. It was I had the feel of it just, and I know it is coming near the end of the season, but I had a feel of the very last game of the season where everything's been decided already, and teams are just playing out the season, playing out the last few games. Garnacho, I thought, was very frustrating yesterday. I really did. He had a lot of the ball, he didn't do much with it. I mean, it was just, I don't know. We've got to a position now where, and I was looking at this online as well after the game, where supporters were glad to get away with a 1-0 defeat. I mean, that's how far we've fallen. Going into that game, I was thinking to myself, if Arsenal hit us on a good day, they could absolutely smash us 3 or 4-0. No one likes to lose, but losing 1-0, I just felt that people were kind of happy with a 1-0 defeat, that it wasn't more. Now, the whole City thing could have played into it, subconsciously of, well, if United beat Arsenal, that's pretty much it, and that could have played into it as well, we got beat, we didn't get hammered, so I'm okay with that. But that's kind of damning, isn't it? I mean, I remember Liverpool in the 90s. You know, I got a lot of Liverpool friends, and they were kind of happy with results like that. I think that's where we see ourselves. And like that last comment just popped up there, we seem to be content with getting beaten 1-0, which was it was a strange game. It really was. It was like Arsenal were happy to just be 1-0 up, and United were happy to be 1-0 down. It was bizarre.
Yeah. That said, even that was marked improvement from what we saw against Palace. But yeah, I mean, there's two sides of the coin with this one, Paul. It's either Arsenal didn't have to play with it out, or they just didn't play very well. And I think like they would, you know, an Arsenal fan or not someone who maybe more objective than me might want to say that that's a sign of a championship standard team, that they can win a game like that when they're not playing well. But I think what we're starting to see is something that I've been saying for a few years, that the league standards are dropping through the floor, and Arsenal now they can win against Everton at the weekend, not win the league. They could finish 1 point, just 1 point less than what they achieved with the Invincible team. You'll start having a few modern Arsenal fans saying, like the Liverpool fans have been doing recently, saying that this is the best ever Arsenal team, better than the United treble team. You will. That's what's going to happen over the next year, because they're the closest ones. They're the best of the rest. And really, it's not close, is it? I mean, you saw City go to Fulham. And look, don't get me wrong. Anything can happen in football. You might have a freak result in the Spurs game, which flips it on its head and gives impetus to Arsenal. And Arsenal might well win the league, but if they win the league, they're not winning anything for the next 4 years, because City will just up a gear, probably take two of their better players. They'll take Saka and go, oh, that's not going to happen again. And, you know, Arsenal fans, and we all know Arsenal are just as bad as Liverpool fans for this, they'll just make out for the next 5 years that they're actually in the conversation with City because they're the next best team, means that they're better than anything that's ever come before. And it's such a ridiculous argument. Now you've seen a few Liverpool fans starting to say, like, oh, I wouldn't put Salah in an all-time Liverpool team. You know, well, what about Hansen? What about Rush? They're suddenly sort of backing down on it, you know, like, because they realise the absurdity of what they've been saying for all this time. And it's a weird thing. Well, you know, United fans, all right, it's not nice to look at, but I think when we've finished second in recent years, we've understood that we're not close to them. We're not like saying, oh, this United team is better than our treble team. We've understood that this is still the worst United team that's been in the Premier League. But all of the last 10 years, there's none of the second place teams have been as good as any of the teams that ever finished second in the Ferguson era. So we know that they're all the worst Premier League teams. So that we've got a level of objectivity there. We can say, no, hang on a minute. This United team have still finished above this Arsenal team. They've still finished above this Liverpool team. So we know how bad everything is. And the point is, Paul, I want to bring it on to what you saw the weekend, because like, now I'm saying all this. Like, I think when you look at the league, all three promoted sides are back down on less than 30 points. All three of them. Like, two of them going down on less than 25 points. Arsenal have dropped points in just 2 games this calendar year. Just two games. One at City and then the 2-0 home defeat to Villa. And they've won all the other games. Occasions since Christmas, since the New Year's Day, they've scored 5 goals or more. So Arsenal are just running rampant. In any other leagues, and they'd be champions by a mile because of this. Teams are getting docked points in real time this season. Clubs are facing real-time financial consequences for things that are happening this season. So it's going to impact lives, livelihoods, careers. And City, meanwhile, just allowed to do what they want, just like come strolling, like early in the task, by the way. Like, you know, in Liverpool's incredible points are getting like close to 100 points and stuff like that. All these things would that now everyone can see that if two teams are doing this repeatedly, it's got to be the sign of a terrible league. And it's all right because, generally speaking, across the rest of Europe, it's obviously better because of the strength of the Premier League. But Paul, you were at Craven Cottage, and City. We're talking about Arsenal didn't have to get out of second gear to be us at Old Trafford. City didn't too, and they beat Fulham, for a good Fulham side, by the way, 4-0, just without breaking sweat.
There was a little bit in there, Wayne, where it's initially when you play those games, you have to score the first goal. Have to score it because straight away, if you concede that first goal, it's given because there was so much on City to win that game. Everyone expected they was going to win it. But if Fulham scored that first goal, then all of a sudden, their players throw off their rucksacks with their flip-flops and Bermuda shorts in and go, oh, a minute, we can have a bit of a go here. But they didn't score that first goal. It was 1-0 for a long period, and it was just balancing. City were having a lot of the ball. Fulham were getting there little bits. But the moment they got that second goal, it could have been more in the end. They was in so much control. But Man City regulated the way they were doing it. It was so easy. Should we go forward now? Should we go backwards and sideways for a little while? And then we decide then when. And it was all ifs, buts, and maybes. And they completely controlled it. Everything about them, the manner they play in, the arrogance of, the people with them. Everyone there, after the game, I saw a lot of their bald people after the game and, all wearing the same suits. Odd-shaped people wearing white trainers, trying to wear designer suits. You look in the mirror, someone needs to tell you, don't do it. Turn around and say to Pep, I want to wear what I'm comfortable in, Pep, not to be one of your players because I don't train every day. It wasn't good. It wasn't a good look, to be perfectly honest. But they was always in control of it. But going to what you're saying, Wayne, is 20, 30 years ago, I'm just going to use 20 and 30 years ago, maybe slightly more than 30 years, so I'm talking about kind of a little bit more about me, is we never had that then. We didn't get Sky trying to sell Sky. Sky let everyone else talk about it for them. Now they're telling you it's the best league in the world, the greatest this, and now they're starting to tell us it. We don't like really being told as humans, do we really? We like to think about ourselves rather than people keep preaching. It's not the best league in the world because it's non-competitive. When we were winning league and when we were losing leagues, we could lose to anybody. That's the way the league was. Everybody set out to be. So when we won a league, we was 100% the best team because we had to work hard over that marathon of a season, every single game. I'm looking at it now and they don't do it. So we had that time when you mentioned Liverpool, when Liverpool finished second to City by 1 point, they were saying they were the greatest ever Liverpool team because of how many points they got. You can't judge how many points you got. When you got that many points, go and look at what happened in Scotland. Go and look what's happened in the Bundesliga. Go and see what was happening in the Italian league with Juve at that certain time, how many points they were getting. That tells you that ain't the greatest league in the world. This league has got issues. You can't have this is the greatest leagues in the world are the competitive one where you get surprises. You get teams that every single player is going out and looking to win the game, not with managers who are just trying to be passive by saying, I'm leaving players out while I'm resting. This rest thing is all about games. Playing is so you don't, certain games don't matter because certain players ain't playing. It's absolute rubbish. As a player, you want to play as many. You look back on your career. I look back on my one. I never played enough games. I wanted to be the same as the Giggsies, the Nevilles, the Dennis Irwins. I wanted to play 500-600 games, but my injury stopped me doing that. But it still hurts me. Are these players going to be bothered about the amount of games they've played? Are they going to be bothered about winning things? I think there's a difference between them and players of eras before. The present day players, nowhere near. The majority of them have got the same heart as what players had many years ago. So this league has got problems. The monster has been has been created by the monsters who run the TV. They've created a league which has diluted the whole of Europe. As simple as that. It's not fun to watch. It's not fun to watch, to be perfectly honest, what we're getting. It's just like showmanship, really. And there's a lot of people have kind of losing interest in it now. They're really, really losing interest. And I was with Terry Butcher yesterday. And Butch lives about an hour away, lives in Suffolk, Ipswich. Fantastic club, beautiful county. I feel sorry for Ipswich. I feel sorry for their fans because they've had an incredible 2 years. And the worst thing that's going to happen for those fans is that they're going to come into the Premier League and all the fun's going to be dragged out of them. It's going to be taken out of them by what this league will do to them, what the TV station will do to them. Having to travel or play games on Fridays, having to go and do 5:30s on a Saturday night, maybe up in Newcastle and things. They don't need it. They've had it 3 o'clock midweek. They play 2 games on average every 7-8 days or something like that. Can you imagine? Can you imagine Pep and him, Mr. Teeth down the road at Liverpool, about them moaning about that? It's just, so I feel sorry for them. The league's going to impact them because we've got this now. And Terry Butcher said it, got these great owners there. They've got this, they've got that. I said, great. But they can only spend it on themselves because they won't allow Ipswich Town to spend any money to really improve their team over a sustained period, because that doesn't fit their narrative. You can't have Ipswich Town suddenly 2 promotions and then threatening to win the Premier League. You can't have that. It doesn't suit it. So what is the point of playing football when someone says you can't win games? And that's my little rant about that lot.
It's a magnificent rant, but while I agree, we still have a point to have this podcast. So don't listen to Paul too much, because we still like talking about it all the time. Dan says, "Morning, chaps. Hope I've not missed the positive sentiment this AM." No, you haven't. Well, you have, because there's been no positivity. Let's be honest. So there was positivity on the Old Trafford forecourt yesterday because Dan's wife made me some birthday brownies, and Dan brought them along, so Dave missed out. The one time you failed over, tried to avoid my birthday, which you successfully did, but you also missed out on the birthday brownies. So, and they were delicious, by the way. Anyway, let's talk about something completely negative. Anthony, who wasn't very happy about having to play left back against Liverpool in the FA Cup because he's the only left-footed player, when it was obvious that he should migrate over there when we were having issues. Had that same problem yesterday when we were trying to chase the game, and Ten Hag made that sort of the wild bonanza roll of the dice like he normally does towards the end of the game. I mean, I thought the biggest complaint was going to be Raya wasting a minute in stoppage time, then making 2 substitutes. He wasted a minute, but the referee still blew on 96. So they've somehow wasted 2 minutes of the injury time, and the clock blew on the allotted. It was bizarre. Anyway, no, my biggest grumble is Anthony complaining that he had to play left back again. I mean, talk about putting the eye in team, Dave. I mean, it's difficult with him because, like, you see him sometimes, and he's probably, I guess it's a low bar, but his job form in the last few weeks when he's been on the pitch has probably been his better. Would you agree? It's a weird thing. I'm not saying he's been good, but it's fight in him. It brings the crowd up a bit. He goes into tackles. He's aggressive, but then you see this attitude, and you think, well, sometimes, mate, have you never experienced anything to do with United history? Everyone gets asked to play in random positions when they're chasing a game. I mean, it happens to all kinds. I mean, in the Sheffield Wednesday game, Paul got brought off for Brian Robson. Robson wasn't going to play at right back. He was like, just throwing everything at it. That's what happens when they're chasing a win. And at least Ten Hag has got a little bit of that, and it's sort of added to the fun. What did you make?
But Wayne, But Wayne, just quickly, just before you carry on, I was taken off. I wasn't going to have a rant walking off that pitch with that man on the touchline, because I knew that in front of everything I might look quite good and look, Paul Parker's not happy, but I know that when Paul Parker was going to walk into that dressing room, there was only going to be one winner. It's as simple as that, and that's what it was. And it's being respectful, and the fact of people make decisions to win games of football. So I'd expect the fans to boo me if I kicked off about being dragged off. But it's a different mentality now. But that's me.
But I think that maybe not booing him at the in the time when it happened, but I think there's a bit of an angry reaction to him, and I certainly wasn't happy to see that. I didn't see it at the time; I saw it afterwards. Dave, what did you make of it? 'Cause, I mean, it's not a good look. But...
No, I mean, when he came on, he had a face like thunder. Anyway, it's like, you know, when you come home and you walk into the kitchen, your wife turns around, she has that face on you, thinking, "Oh, I'm in for one tonight." That's the way it was like with Anthony. As soon as you come on, I'm like, "Geez, this guy, he's already upset. And he hasn't even stepped foot onto that pitch. What's going on here?" I mean, Paul's correct. These are footballers these days. You know, it's my way or no way. He has to understand that, you know, as the only left playing player on the pitch, left-footed player, there's times where you have to make that sacrifice. He obviously wasn't happy about being dropped. You could clearly see that when he came on. Like I said, he had a face like thunder, and then he come on and then to embarrass himself by you know, arguing with Ericsson and McTominay about getting into that position was just silly. You know what I mean? It really was. It's like, if you're unhappy about it, save it for the dressing room. You know, that's what you got to do. But you are right. You know, but the bar's not set very high for Anthony. But he has been playing well, and maybe that's why he was a bit grumbled to think, well, I'm going to come on and now I'm going to be put in as left back. You know, he's around the ground. He's around the trainer. He knows the situation we're in right now with injuries. Just shut up and get on with it. You know, it's absolutely ridiculous. It really is. He should be, you know, he's living a dream that you know, 99% of people will never live. He's playing for Manchester United, the biggest club in the world. It's just embarrassing to see him come on and behave like that, and have someone like Ericsson and McTominay having to go over and you know, scold him like a school child. That's just, you know, I didn't understand it. But listen, the club's a mess. Let's be honest. This is it's not a major shock that we have players behaving that way. I got to assume that, you know, this is what they're doing. This is how they're behaving in front of millions of people. What way are they behaving? You know, when the cameras are not around. It's just a damning verdict on how the club has been run right now. And hopefully, you know, Ratcliffe can come in and sort all these you know, superstars, so-called superstars out. But yeah, I was pretty disappointed with him. But you know, like I said, when he came on the pitch, you could clearly see he wasn't happy at all that he was after being, you know, benched, and then he just made a fool of himself by the way he behaved. And normally he makes a fool of himself by the way he plays, but this time was the way he behaved. So, but yeah, pretty disappointing to see that, considering the mess that we're in right now. You know.
Dan says the only thing in his defence is he's still young and probably needs a bit of guidance. That said, it doesn't look like he'll make it United long term. No, again, you're having that conversation about which the best to move on, and he's probably got a price tag on his head. It's not going to be 75 million or 90 million, whatever we paid for him, but he's still an asset that someone will look for a decent amount of money. You would think, and the thing is, if he doesn't argue, if he goes over there and he just puts a shift in, he's stuck with the United fans, rises exponentially. You know, he can, by doing nothing, by saying nothing and getting on with it, everyone goes, all right. You're showing commitment and you're showing leadership qualities by doing that. You had an opportunity to do that by literally just getting on with it. It was and he didn't have to play well, because you would say, well, he's a right-sided attack playing back, and you know what I mean, like Casemiro. Well, Casemiro's a riddle, and then he roll into himself more. But the idea being that if you just get into the position they're not supposed to be playing and you just get on with it, then you will be praised by supporters for professionalism. But yeah, well, anyway, also United. There's some things that happen with Manchester United. You know, we went to Brazil, and by the way, Paul mentioned Terry Butcher. If Paul mentions Terry Butcher, I can't allow this podcast to finish. And we've still got some way to go yet without doing this story. One of my favourite Ron Atkinson, Martin Edwards stories. So, 1986 World Cup. They don't want to give Ron any more money because he's been bringing in Mark Higgins out of retirement and is it Higgins? The player he brought in out of retirement and Goth Crooks on loan and Colin Gibson and Terry Gibson. They don't want to give him money, but he really wants Terry Butcher. So he says, he goes to Martin after he goes to the World Cup. Before the World Cup, Ron Atkinson says to Martin Edwards, they're playing down at Watford. So it's the right end of the season. And Ron says to him, that's it for me, isn't it, Mr. Chairman? And Edwards actually convinced Atkinson to carry on. So he was going to jack it in himself. They carry on. Edwards expects Atkinson to stay at home and sort of fix, United, work on the problems at United. But he goes to the World Cup in Mexico, comes back saying, I want to sign Terry Butcher. Terry Butcher, world-class centre-off, undoubtedly is going to improve United's defence. In fact, even to the extent that Fergie wanted him after. So, but Edwards is reluctant to give him any more money and says to him, well, I can't do that because we've allocated the money for a new club museum. To which Atkinson replies, one of my favourite lines ever, that's great. When we're losing 1-0, I'll bring the museum up for a corner. You can see why that relationship disintegrated fast, but it's still one of my great lines. I love that. Anyway, so talking about Old Trafford sort of infrastructure, there's some things like, you expect United to get blamed for, like in 2000 when they went to Brazil and they were forced to go to Brazil by the FA saying, you've got to go, otherwise our bid to get the 2006 World Cup is going to be compromised and we're not going to be able to be successful because you didn't go to the World Cup. So a lot of because you didn't go to the World Cup, FIFA's new tournament. So the political pressure was put on United to go. They went. They tried to do everything they could to sort of compete all competitions, but because of where the competition was held in early January, it meant that they had no option but to pull out of the FA Cup. And they asked for favourable press before they did that. The Mirror agreed to that with Piers Morgan, and Piers Morgan then just changed his mind and absolutely tried the club. So United were damned if they did and damned if they didn't, because if they didn't go, then Piers Morgan would have said that United were a disgrace for letting the country down, and that's why we didn't get the World Cup in 2006. Anyway, of all the things that I expect United to get blamed for, global warming wasn't on the list. So apparently when everything was going on yesterday, if anyone was at the game yesterday, there was a downpour. It was torrential. It's a rain. And this is Manchester standards, by the way. Someone who's lived here for like 13 years or so. The rain was so bad after the game. The floods were really, and everyone's seen the footage of it. It doesn't look great. Some areas of the club, the stadium, rain was leaking, but I don't think it had ever dealt with a downpour like that before. I'm not excusing that. Everyone knows that Old Trafford either needs to be rebuilt completely or it needs extensive refurbishment. We all know that. But the amount of people saying, "No, it wouldn't have happened elsewhere." Well, yes, it would, and probably did. But the reason being that everyone's seen the pictures at United is that the game was being screened live to millions. If the game was being screened and it was at Manchester City Stadium, you'd see floods on the pitch there, and you'd see rain coming down on the seats because they can't do anything about the rain. Well, you would, Dave. I know you're pulling a face. Rain was coming in. You're going to see flood on this because the rain was that bad. Like, there were people outside after the game. No one wanted to walk, so everyone was keeping in the like under the tunnel. that no one was walking out. Some guys were being pushed out into it, so they couldn't do anything but just sit in the rain. It was so bad. So where the puddles were, they all started doing the Klinsman, the dive celebration. Fully clothed men, obviously a bit worse for drink. Like they were having a Klinsman off. Like 3 of them were doing it, like sliding. Everyone going. I didn't see, so I was behind the crowd. Everyone's going in that hey, and they were just running through. I mean, the one poor Sodo I did see, his phone must be destroyed. He's waking up with massive regret this morning. But they were saying, like, some of the guys that we know, Dave, like Andy, who drives up and he drives a coach. He was saying that when he got back on the coach, everyone everyone was stripped off driving back apart from him because they had to take off the clothes. Anyway, that's just my We've got a question for you, Paul, before I move on to it. I was just talking about the weather there, which is more interesting than United's performance. Box says, would you have done the Klinsman? I mean, you had 2 chances to do it in the United shirt. 1 chance, really, because the Klinsman came a thing in '94. He came to England and celebrated his first goal with a dive. So you only had 1 chance after that for United. Did it ever enter your mind that, you're going to do a Klinsman celebration?
Never, but I'd like him to have done it, but done it off the fact on about him diving, actually done it where he could have tried to dive, but you kick him on his way down so he wouldn't be able to get up so quick and laugh.
Okay.
That's the only way to do it.
But if again, it doesn't give me the opportunity to talk about Paul's great goal against Reading. So if you've not seen it, you can have a look at it and then see Paul's celebration because he looks it's like John O'Shea's celebration against Arsenal, where he didn't, he's quite surprised how good it was.
I always say though, Wayne, that if I had any training on celebrating, I might have won goal of the month.
Yeah. JS says I saw a few people do the Klinsman outside the South Stand. That's exactly where I'm talking about. Just part of it, yeah. So I'm glad we saw the same thing.
I'm just realising, Wayne, people were doing it on concrete. I've just suddenly realised.
Yeah. There were massive puddles like lakes, like the puddles were forming that deep. So they were just doing, fully clothed, Paul. Fully clothed. And
I just suddenly realised, no, I would definitely never do that. Goodness sake, that's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Yeah. That's what watching this club does to you. That's the unfortunate part.
Yeah. Well, it happened, and hopefully it doesn't happen again because it was, as JS said, more entertainment of the game. I've got eyewitness corroboration that it actually happened, so definitely not making that up. It was certainly an experience. Look, all right, so end of the season, United are going to play Newcastle this week, and they're going to play Brighton at the weekend. 2 teams who've already beaten us this season, so we could be closing the season with 4 teams having doubled us, which will be another piece of history in a season that I don't think that's ever happened before, that we close the season with 4 teams having doubled us. We can't do anything that stops this season being an unmitigated disaster. It's looking increasingly like we're going to finish in our lowest ever Premier League position. Dave, I'll come to you first. I mean, is there anything that happens in these next 2 games that can give you an indication that there's a healthy, rosy way forward?
No, I mean, if we lose these 2 games, that's going to be what, 16? Is it 16 defeats in the league?
I'll check that while you're talking.
I think so. I think we've lost. I mean, the season's a dead rubber at this stage. The only benefit you can get from these last 2 games is to try and get a bit of form going into the cup final. That's all. That's the only benefit. It's just disheartening that these last 2 games are going to be. I don't even know what to say at this point. What can we benefit other than that? Try and get a bit of form, but I'm not sure whether you touched on this at the start of the show. Wayne Rooney's comment yesterday about players. I don't know. you want players to come back to try and get a bit of match fitness for the cup final, get a bit of form. That's the only thing these last two games are going to do. And that's the only thing is we've got what 10 days of training between now and the cup final. There's potentially 10 injuries, judging by our record so far this season. Should we even be training at all? Mason Mount got injured again. Luke Shaw has had a setback.
How did Luke Shaw get injured when he was injured?
He had a setback in his injury. I think they went down the list and they were like, yeah, you've been injured. Wait. You haven't been injured in a while. Yeah, that's because I'm currently injured. No. You don't get out of it by saying that. You still have to get injured. So out you get. Yeah. Go get yourself injured and get back in here. Mason is waiting for you in the medical room. I don't. It's just we just want the season to end, don't we? And we got an FA Cup final coming up. It's one of those things whether you want to risk players coming back or you don't. But then Paul is better versed in this than any of us. Is it a good idea to bring players back to try and get a bit of fitness before the cup final, or hold off and wait and risk it in the cup final? It's just our record. We've had 63 now individual injuries this season, which is just mind blowing. It really is. It really is. Something's not right.
Yeah, but to be honest, David, is it gone to the stage now that everyone's just looking for stats? And all of a sudden, let's have injury stats and see a league of who's had the most injuries now. Who's going to win that trophy? It was like the Jack Grealish, I've been fouled more than anyone else trophy. It's a load of rubbish. I've never known in my lifetime of so many people get injured in training. I don't get it. What's happening? I mean, is it? I don't know. If Sparking been involved in the training and joining in, I could understand why players have got injured. But it doesn't make, and even Sparky never got injured. We didn't get players got injured in training. If you felt something in training, you'd mostly just go and just a little bit, but you'd play the next game unless it had to go into a pot. It's a weakness of mind, and we, as a country, have suddenly weakened people's minds. And plus, as well, there's no great incentive to go and play and put yourself at the risk of getting stick from the fans if you're earning that good of money. What's the point? No one's going to question you. So you can get on with it. Before, you was injured, and even your own teammates would say to you, surely, come on, it's only this you can play. Your teammates would get at you. You knew that the boss wouldn't be happy because he didn't want Deadwood around. You was only good for him if you could play, then even better if you went and played well. So Ten Hag must be pulling his hair out. The problem is he can't go and react in the way he wants to as a manager because he'll be shouted down by everybody of being a bully. Where before, as a man, you could say a little bit questioning the application of players, but now Ten Hag says it, and he gets absolutely slaughtered. He gets battered. I mean, the man has been battered by a country 5,000 miles away about a brown suit. So how's he ever going to get anything from it? The man is being put under pressure by the media of this country because he's managing Manchester United. They are desperate for a change. The media want a different person in charge of Manchester United. Manchester United bored everybody. You're trying to say, sorry, we're not having this because we've been down this road so many times in changing managers, changing coaching staff, and we're getting the same reaction results over the longer period, which is zip. Getting nothing from it except ridicule.
Yeah. Well, we'll preview the final next week. So, on the league games, is there anything that United can do against Newcastle and Brighton that makes you think? Sorry, just to close on what Dave was saying about going to 16 league defeats. If they do that, then we've lost as many as we've won this season.
Which is absolutely incredible. Most teams would be absolutely jumping up and down about that if they were to go and achieve with those amounts of, winning 16 games in a season. But, it's just not acceptable if you're meant to be a club that's competing for everything, throughout a season. But when we're talking about the next two games, I just think you can't go into a cup final without any momentum. If what you want is performance and wins behind you to go to a cup final. At this moment in time, Manchester United need performances. They need performances. Okay, you think, oh, they can't lose to Brighton or lose, but they need performances because the performances have been absolutely disgraceful. Generally, you get a bad game and then they fight back again, and everyone goes, "Oh, okay." It hasn't even been that. It's been a complete waste of time. So what's he going? So the manager, if I was him, I'd be thinking to myself, well, I'm going to try and ask him to play, and then I can't. I'm going to try and have a word of him, get him to be strong and think of his head. But if I go too far, he's going to maybe go running back to the doctor and say the manager's trying to force me to play. Then the doctor's going to go to his next step up. Then the manager's going to get stick because he's forcing people to play what they're supposed to love, by the way, football. Because we love football when it comes out, when it matters to social media. But when it comes down to it, really, we don't want to play too much. So he needs to get players and get their engines ticking over to play in the cup final, the last game of the season. And it'd be interesting what players suddenly surface, maybe a little bit for the Brighton game, the last game of the season, before the cup final. Because if he has to bring people in who haven't played in this last 3 weeks, then it's 100% or an even bigger percentage, if it was possible, that United are not going to get close to City. The last performance at Wembley against them was better than I expected, to be perfectly honest. It was a lot better. And they competed against them in the FA Cup last year. This season, and what you're looking at in a moment in time, it could be the final nail in the coffin, and it'll be Ten Hag, the one who'll pay for it, which is a shame, really, because as we know, in this case, it isn't the manager's fault. Normally, in most working environments, you look at a manager, you go to the line manager. But I'm looking at it now, and it's not right. It's totally wrong. Totally wrong.
Yeah. There's a lot of that in the comments here. I mean, yeah, we talk about the injuries, and I don't think anyone's deflecting anything away from Ten Hag. I think he's definitely getting, like you said. I thought it looked good yesterday. I thought that suit was quite nice on him. I can't understand why people are criticising it.
Yeah, I mean, you know the people I'm talking about, didn't you?
Yeah.
It's absolutely disgraceful. I know some people go, it's petty, it's nothing to worry about. But what right have they got to be saying what they're saying? Talk about what you're meant to be talking about. It wasn't a show. It wasn't a show for a fashion catalogue. It's meant to be talking about football. And one of them has got no right to say anything because in '96 he looked anemic in a white suit. It's absolutely embarrassing. These little things they've got to be remembered, and he should remember that. And you're on there to talk about football, what you're supposed to know. You're no expert on what people are wearing, on how people should dress. Because if that's the case, go and work on a different channel. But it's a little den of iniquity anyway. So don't know why I'd let it get to me, but it bothers me. It's that weak. That's where it's got to now with the media and Ten Hag. I don't know what he's done in the earlier part of his life, but it seems like someone is trying to hunt him down. If he gets assassinated, I'll think to myself, yeah, it was coming soon.
I remember Alison Rudd of the Times, was it second game or something, said he's got no charisma. He went on radio like properly blasting his personality and everything. I was like, give him a chance. He's coming to a new country. But yeah, well, I mean, we'll see. Like I said, we will be back next week to preview the final and talk about it, and hopefully we'll have some momentum going into that. And we'll talk about all the other stuff like the ownership structure and that change in more detail if necessary at some point. While we are talking about the FA Cup, I should have a special note to say congratulations to the women's team on the FA Cup yesterday. Everyone knows I'm a sucker for nostalgia and romance and everything like that. And I like the synergy and the recalibration of it happening in the women's team. That there's a number 7 who's an homegrown player who scores a goal like that. Sensational goal in the final. It really was a proper hit, and United's glory years for the men's team started with winning the FA Cup in 1909, and I know it's like I'm not drawing any sort of comparisons really, only to say that people will remember it. And it's when you see someone score a goal like that, and it's one of our own and everything, that you think it's very difficult to understand, to appreciate that something like that might never be replicated. A goal like that win a trophy, really is really very rare. And obviously United went on to win by 4, and all those fans who were there last year and they were heartbroken by how close United got, and how much they felt short on the day. Well, they had the reward yesterday. By all accounts, that they didn't get flooded out of the game at the end like we did back in Manchester. So, congratulations and incredible achievement, and hopefully the men will be following suit in 2 weeks' time. Remember, Dave loves my stat of managers losing a first final and winning the second final. Well, might be some synergy there between both teams losing the final last year and winning it this time around. What do you think, Dave? Dave's obviously disconnected, so
I was just going to go back to agree with Paul and all the bullshit stats, and then we finish with that.
Yeah, now I've got to mark this podcast as explicit just because I dropped in a naughty word at the end. Thanks for that, Dave. Giving me extra work when I don't need it on a Monday morning. We'll be back next week to look at the Premier League season. Hopefully, Arsenal will be champions and we will have helped them on their way. I don't even know why it's come to this. When I'm dejected, you know that the end times are near. All right, guys. Have a great week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back soon.